Hello everyone, this is Dr. Rick Whitman. In the picture you see me in the northern Colorado area a few years ago measuring an intrusion in a rock that has to do with telling the age of the rock. The intrusion is actually younger than the actual rock, this rock being some of the oldest in North America. I'm taking this picture to show you how sometimes getting in the field is how science work is done, and most science work, as you'll see this week, has to do with an imprint into technology. Maybe not right away. Some of the folks that did work long ago didn't really have any effect in how we perceive things until more recently. At any rate, this is Module 5 of SCI100. This is your introduction. Now this is the setup for Module 5. As you'll see, you actually have 3 items to do this week, 2 quizzes and a discussion. Discussions are important because it's how you can exchange ideas and expand your thinking quickly, which is one of the advantages of this class. You certainly would do it if you were in a face-to-face class, so this actually is how you can accomplish the social side of gaining knowledge in the scientific area. As you go through this, understanding scientific developments, as I mentioned, an awful lot of our developments actually have to do with how science imprints technology, as you'll see in a couple of videos you have this time. To begin with, our scientific milestones in this area, this video especially will introduce you to all of the wonderful things that have happened that have changed the world, certainly within living memory. Certainly in the last 40-50 years, most of what's on this video has impressed and imprinted on your life, things that we take for granted almost day for day. By the way, Module 5 begins a 2-module set. Now that we're in the second half, you have developed some tools to work with. We're still building though. For example, there's 8 Great Americans, a short video here, or a presentation here about Americans, Franklin, Joseph Henry, and even Marsh, a paleontologist, fantastic guy by the way, and early Indiana Jones, though he doesn't look like him. What we learned about genetics, how our knowledge of space and even the ability to photograph things in space with the Hubble telescope has changed how we even look at things. The internet that makes this class possible, the landing on the moon, the anniversary is this year, and the Artie, which is a tree hominid that predates Lucy, one of the earliest men, that showed that walking upright came earlier than we thought, and at a point of time when the early hominids, early types of human ancestors, were still living in trees. Fascinating topic. Following that, you should have a quiz here, number 1, 511, which is based on it's 20 points, and it's based on some of the things you've just seen. You can take it twice, your highest score counts. Even if you take it once and get the 20 points, sometimes taking it a second time will show you a different set of questions, or questions rearranged slightly so that it would enhance your ability at no penalty. After that, we're going to look at the shifts of science and how things have changed. For example, I'm going to look at biology here. How we've looked at things have changed with regards to how we look at things. Carl Linnaeus developed what we call taxonomy, and that's how we name things for really good reasons. We name things for what's called their physical relationship. That's how we used to do it, and recently we've changed this around a little bit to include genetic makeup. So for example, some hawks that we thought were hawks no longer are, but it helps. We're also looking at how we transfer genes and how we get into these paradigms. So a paradigm is when you believe that you make a big shift in how thought is done. And there's a few, especially when you take a look at a guy like Copernicus coming up next. And while I apologize that some of these videos come up with ads ahead of time, please click through the ads. They're not important. But you'll learn about this gentleman named Nicholas Copernicus, who, although he didn't have a background in astronomy, he's a self-taught astronomer, made some theoretical observations that later changed how we think about the sun and the earth in relation to one another. Up until then, based largely on church-based learning and teaching, the earth was the center of the known universe, and in fact Copernicus stood everything on its ear by saying, wait a minute, the sun is the center of the solar system, without saying where the center of the universe is, which in fact we don't know. Later Galileo picked up on the same idea, paid a price for it because the world wasn't ready to accept that idea just yet, but it turned out to be true. Following the Copernicus video, you'll have your second quiz, which is on the paradigm shifts and thinking. Again, 20 points. You can take it twice. Your high score counts. Following that, we get into some scientific milestones in modern living, 5-3. There is an interesting thing here about 10 greatest scientists who changed the world. See 10 influential scientists, 10 of the most influential, and you'll find, for example, that this one is a modern day hero. I don't think she was appreciated even in her own time for what she brought to the world. Received 2 Nobel Prizes, one in chemistry and one in physics, and this was after her husband was tragically killed, run over by a milk wagon, and was crushed by the steel wheels. The others that follow are all interesting. Some are even within living memory. Following the top 10 is a bit about what has science done for you lately. I jokingly love to refer to this stuff because oftentimes people say, what's in it for me? I did notice, looking at the energy consumption in the United States, even though we've got more people than ever before, the amount of electricity we're using in the United States is going down, in part because of this kind of light bulb, and actually a newer one called the light emitting diode. This kind of light bulb contains mercury, so if you break one, it does pose a hazard to you and your family. So I suspect these will go out of existence soon. But since we're using less electricity, that tells me that even though there's more people, more apartments, and more houses than ever before, when our electricity consumption is going down, that means that we have used technology to help our lives. We're less and less plastic. There's lots more things that are happening in the agricultural world because of some carefully crafted genetic modifications. Some people are against it, but in fact, you may not realize this. If a bee pollinizes one type of corn with pollen from another type of corn from across the street, it is genetically modified. That kind of genetic modification most people don't mind. It's when you take a cell from a jellyfish and put it into a beef cow or chicken, for example, that I take an exception to that, and I'm not sure that's a great idea. And without this kind of modern thinking, we wouldn't have any modern medicines that have done this. So what science does, it fuels technology, it makes strides in medicine, it has a personal impact, and it does shape our society. And there's more to this than I'm showing you here. Now here's the most important part of the week, because it carries the most points, and that is, after watching the video and reading the articles in Learning Block 5.3, consider what scientists and milestone scientific discovery helped pave the way for the natural science topic you identified in your news story. And here, the impact here is to understand the scientific process, provide a response to the following question in your initial post. So you want to key on these two things. Identify the historical scientific discovery that's the foundation for the news story you have. You may have to look further. The Shapiro Library is a great place to look, and if you've not been on there, you really need to and will need to as you continue your academic career, whether it be at Southern New Hampshire or anywhere else. Online library research is the way to go. Personal story, I researched nearly 450 scientific journal articles to produce my dissertation, and I only went to the library once. I did all of it online, and I did it in hours, whereas in the old days it would have taken me weeks and months to do that kind of research. So it is the way to go. In making your post, it says to provide a 2 or 3 sentence summary of the scientist who made historic scientific discovery you identified in your first question. Use examples from the news story to show how this historic event impacts our world today. Now, there's also a rule here when responding to your peers. Most of you have been quite kind and generous in your responses. I want you to get away from I agree with you, oh that's fascinating. That is not really a discussion, that's a comment. A discussion is where you contribute something either within or beyond what the first person has posted. Not looking for great amounts of volume here, but you need to get away from simplistic responses. I want to show you your discussion rubric here so you'll have a better idea about how this gets graded. Let me make this a little larger. Here's your assignment, and here's how you do your response. Now, this is how I have to grade your paper. And let me make this a little larger over here. You'll be graded on these critical elements. The one with the most point value, and this is in percent of the points that are offered for this, so 40% of your points will come from developing an initial post with organized, clear point of view or idea using rich and significant detail. If you use only adequate organization, it gets downgraded. You'll get 85% of the points of the 40, about 33. If you develop an initial post with a point of view that has gaps in your organization, or even if you don't develop post with any organizing principles, you could get a 0%, and sometimes that happens. Read the fabulous question and prompt to get yourself on time and on target here. We're looking for this by Thursday so that your peers have a chance to comment to yours. For some of you, I know that your work tends to occur on the weekends because that's when you have the time. This week it'd be worth your while to stretch a little bit and see if you can get it done earlier in the week. You want to submit your post on time. You want to provide relevant and meaningful response to others, much as you would expect them to respond to you, and your mechanics. Your writing is easily understood, clear, concise, using proper citation methods. So if you bring in another article, you have to post it so that it can be found. Use a hot link, please. If you don't respond to others, it's tough to get points if you're not responding to others. So we're going to hold to this one, and that's worth 20% of the points. That's 8 out of 40. So do your work there. Now, sometimes folks like to run ahead and do modules out of sequence or ahead of schedule. That's not necessarily a good idea, because what happens is the thinking that you needed to develop in module 5 might be off track, and you might not have gotten feedback from me or your peers until after you've made commitments in the next module. So I urge you to have caution there. Well, we're in our second half of the semester. March Madness continues. It snowed overnight here in Indiana. If you're in the Northeast, it's snowing there too. If you're in the South, it's quite warm today. This is Sunday morning, March 31st. I look forward to hearing from all of you. You're doing fine. Keep up the good work.